And I am from a country where there were Nazi concentration camps, and for every Polish person, from a child, he or she understands what it means. Because we continue to discuss this history even now, and I thought, this is impossible. This is which century we have, and we said that, you know, after Second World War, that it should never happen, this type of genocide and so on. And how is it possible that the world knows so little, that there are children, women, people with disabilities, whole families being relocated to the camps? And that was for me the moment when I thought I have to do something about it. And at that I started to, I graduated from Korean studies at Warsaw universities, and when I was still a student, we were mostly taught about South Korea by South Korean teachers. However, I knew that the 2 years before, students before me were taught by North Korean professors, and I was wondering why we don't discuss the North Korean situation in North Korea, that we only learn about the half of the country, really, and not the totality of the Korean peninsula. And one day when the first internet came, with these green screens and so on, I started looking for any reports related to North Korean human rights violations, to kind of get, maybe there is some first-hand information of what is happening inside North Korea. And one of the first websites was Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights, with testimonies by North Korean resettlers who escaped. Many of them were former prisoners of political prison camps. So when I graduated, I started working in Korean companies, including Korean embassy, South Korean embassy. But I thought I have to find a way to get involved in somehow North Korean human rights, or do something, or somehow, you know, help bring awareness to what is happening inside North Korea. And then it's just kind of, you know, step by step, it kind of got connected, because I kind of finished this human rights course by one of the organizations that was actually approached by Citizens Alliance. The chairman and the founder of Citizens Alliance told me that they discussed within the office, and they were wondering whether I would like to come to South Korea to work. And I said immediately, yes, thank you. And I went home. This was 12 a.m. because we finished late that conference. And I went upstairs and was looking for kind of big luggage. And my dad got awakened, and he was saying, like, what are you doing? This is midnight. And I was like, Dad, I'm going to Korea. They invited me. I will be in South Korea working on North Korean human rights. And my dad was kind of confused and like, really, now at midnight? And I'm like, no, just go to sleep, I will explain you. And that was kind of, you know, the moment once I came here and once I started working. It's just kind of 17 years passed, and it's going on still, and I'm going strong, I think, although kind of getting aged as well. But this is, you know, this is my story. I mean, you can never compare fully any transitional justice process in one country to another country, because every country has its own kind of historical context, and this historical context very much influences transitional justice. So is South Korea. The context of, for example, Japanese colonization here will also influence transitional justice process, right? And the same is in North Korea itself. Each country has its very unique kind of historical context that really very much influences the process and how the process looks like in the future. The one kind of similarity, of course, is the fact that first and foremost, these institutions that were put in place, they were based on Soviet matrix. And so they run according to the same kind of system, although the system was adjusted with time in every country. So in Poland it was different, in East Germany it was different, because it also, every country kind of, adjusted the system with time. And North Korea also changed it a lot. But the kind of origin is the same. The surveillance, the type of, gathering information on every citizen that is in the file, in the acts of what that person has done, and especially some families or some individuals that are more active, more outspoken, more kind of dissident toward the communist regime, for example, then they will be more under such surveillance, right? And so these similarities you can see everywhere. Whether this is, you talk about Poland, whether you talk about former Czechoslovakia, Hungary, East Germany, or whether you talk in North Korea, you have tons of acts on individuals and on whole families being gathered by North Korean secret police, because that was established how Soviets, established this system both in Eastern Europe or Central Europe, and the same it was as they kind of entered to establish this institution in North Korea. So yes, we do UN advocacy, yes, we do reports, yes, we do talk to diplomats, but very big chunk of our operation is also educational programs and resettlement programs for North Korean resettlers. And so once South Korea democratized and more people were coming from North Korea on this wave of hunger that was already, we didn't have any kind of resettlement really program, any system kind of established. So people would gather with volunteers, with other people, they would connect them, kind of introduce them to better jobs, or bring kind of, food and necessities to homes and so on. So that was the kind of first origin of Citizens Alliance. So I am involved in all of the kind of operations except for rescue missions, but most of my kind of time is devoted to advocacy and also research. So as every human rights organization, we need to gather information mostly from, whether this is directly meeting people or whether you look at the satellite websites and so on and confirm some of the information that you are receiving, or through, let's say, quietly through people who work inside North Korea, including certain agencies and so on. You get as much information as possible, then kind of analyze that information, publish the report. And thus far, and after that, you also have to go through this cycle, publicize it, make it known to the media, make it known to the diplomats, make it known to the UN, especially when North Korea comes for the review. So let's kind of create some type of mandate that will highlight the information to such an extent that nobody will be able to deny it in the future, what is really happening inside North Korea. And it took us about a year of preparations and so on. So first what we did was, for example, I went to Geneva with 2 former political prisoners and also with Human Rights Watch, and we met Navi Pillay. At that time she was a High Commissioner for Human Rights, in order to convince her to create a mandate of COI. We needed her statement so that we could use her kind of support to convince other countries to create commission of inquiry. And this is what happened. We met with her in December, then she made this statement in January that became publicized, and then we started running until when resolution is really adopted every March. Before March we had to kind of be sure that the wording for COI enters the resolution, and that was kind of going back and forth. Embassies in different countries and several of organizations were involved in that as well, to make sure that nobody will oppose it. and then the commission of inquiry was established. So so that was part of type of the work that I was also involved with, and that I continue to do in order to kind of put a higher spotlight on what is happening in the country, because the international community tends to slip down with, it's like report something big has happening and they forget, and they think like, okay, there are more important, like right now Myanmar, right, and nobody cares what is happening in North Korea. So you have to continue to put something more on the kind of agenda of international community, to show them that no, the situation has not changed and it might be even worse. You have to kind of create that. So that is part of my job, the reports, the advocacy, and kind of devising ways how to engage more and more international community.